This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. And today we're talking about central casting and how could it get worse as this guy, Sam Bankman-Fried and BTX and FTTs and all this crypto stuff. And I mean, our guest today is Mark Moss, a guy who likes to take care of himself. Good looks are his character. He's a major contributor, friend of our Rich Dad, and his new book is called The Uncommunist Manifesto. And I don't know how you put enough journalism together to find out as much as you did about this guy, Sam Bankman-Fried, and all the characters. But let's start with, why did people like, what's his name, Jim Cramer of CNBC, didn't he call Sam Bankman-Fried the Warren Buffett of crypto or something like? What are some of those things you found out what they were calling this guy?
Yeah. So first of all, I've been reporting on the cryptocurrency space since 2016. So I've been kind of deep into it, and I have actually some pretty close ties and connections to the inner workings of Sam Bankman-Fried back since 2017. So I kind of have been familiar, but yes, it's been a lot of research. But to the point, Jim Cramer called him the next J.P. Morgan.
Oh, Jesus.
Because he didn't create steel or oil or banking, right? He just created a bunch of crypto fraud tokens out of thin air. But Jim Cramer called him the next J.P. Morgan.
So how come Cramer is wrong all the time? I mean, how can he still be on CNBC? Is it because Sam Bankman-Fried pays so much money?
Well, we certainly know that, and I know it's something that you've talked about forever, is that, most financial advisors are just sales reps. They try to sell the products of their company. And so these people have to bow down to the advertisers. And FTX, SBF, we call him Sam Bankman-Fried, we call him SBF for short. But his company, FTX, has spent over $200 million advertising. They're the largest advertiser across sports and media, the Super Bowl, et cetera. And so, of course, they probably have to talk pretty favorably about him. As to why Jim Cramer is wrong so much, the funny thing is there's actually two different ETFs now that you can buy that actually counter trade Jim Cramer. He fabulously got Facebook Meta wrong. He was crying on air about that, misleading so many people. And now, of course, he was wrong about FTX as well.
But it wasn't there Elizabeth Holmes, and then there was, what was that other one that he was on it, run by another woman?
Yeah, Thanos, right? Elizabeth Holmes and Thanos.
And there was another one just recently too. He just raved about him, and they went belly up too.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one that is.
Well, this is what I'm a U.S. Marine, and our thinking doesn't go above our zipper level. We don't have much higher thought. And then when I found out they're all having group sex, I'm going, oh my God. You couldn't pay me to jump into that group sex. I mean, God almighty. It can't get much worse. And then you have this guy, Fetterman, wins the Senate against Dr. Oz, who's a good-looking guy. I mean, America is turning into central casting for the Addams family.
Yeah.
And then in Arizona, they can't even count the votes. Oh my God. And then this guy, I'm not really Republican or Democrat. It's your choice. You can vote if you want to. Biden wins the election sitting in his basement, and Trump is on the road, millions of people cheering him on, and Biden sits in his basement while his son Hunter is cutting deals in China, taking nude pictures with him with hookers. I'm going, what has happened to America? Holy mackerel. And now SBF, he just was the frosting. I mean, he and his goofy-looking girlfriend and they're having group sex. I'm going, you got to be kidding me. If I had $1 billion, I'd hire something better looking than that. You know what I mean? I'm not into that stuff, but my God, it's gotten strange looking.
Well, and it's certainly drug fueled for sure, right? Caroline, the CEO of Alameda, which is his girlfriend, had talked about their amphetamine use and how being so strung out on amphetamines makes it very hard to deal with normal people or sober people. And so they were strung out on drugs. They were, dealing with billions of dollars. Publicly, he said that he was doing this all for the good of humanity. He was donating 100% of his money. He drove a Toyota Corolla, and it was all lies. He lived in like a $30 million mansion in the Bahamas. Had another big house in New York. They were spending money like it was going out of style. So it was all a big lie, all a big charade.
It sounds like Black Lives Matter. They own the biggest houses in Topanga Canyon and Beverly Hills and all that stuff. And they help the poor blacks. I'm going, what has happened to our country? I'm not against black people. I'm against fraud and lies.
Yeah.
But they get away with it. We can't even count votes here in Arizona.
Yeah,
it's
insane.
And the Secretary of State, who was in charge of the last election, Katie Hobbs, she's going to verify her own election now. I mean, give me a break. What has happened, Mark?
After she sent out all those ballots that didn't have her opponent's name on them.
Oh, God. Oh, God. How is this happening?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get into what you found out about my buddy, Sam Bankman-Fried, and his girlfriend of Alameda or whatever they are. And what were they up to?
So I think it's really important from people, because I've made a couple of posts on Twitter lately and people don't understand where I'm coming from because they don't understand how this fraud actually works. So I think it's important to start there. So this cryptocurrency boom has been brought on by greedy speculators. And so what happens? So basically, Sam Bankman-Fried has two companies, one called FTX, which is the exchange where you can buy and sell them all. And he has another company called Alameda. And Alameda is something called a market maker, or you could call them a faker or a manipulator. So market makers trade on thinly traded volume to artificially create a price. So what happens is, and Sam Bankman-Fried actually gave an interview, and it's on Bloomberg. It was in April of this year. And he breaks all this down. Let's say that you create this box. It's just a box. You say it's going to change the world, but all is it a box. And then you put tokens in and take tokens out. And so then this market maker starts trading this volume on very, very thin liquidity to artificially create a market cap. So they take 100,000 tokens, they take 2% of them, and they quickly trade them, wash trade them back and forth between themselves to then say these tokens are worth $2, $5, $100. And then you say, well, $100 token times the total market cap gives it $1 billion. So they create $1 billion of potential value out of thin air. And then what happens, and he describes it in this interview, is then because they've made this market and they've made this token look like it's growing in value and it's all worth all this money, then they list it on FTX, and all these people want to start trading it because they perceive it as having value, the value they gave it artificially. And so then everyone starts trading it, and then FTX makes all the money off these unsuspecting people trading a bunch of worthless garbage.
And isn't FTX like what I call the COMEX? All it is a platform.
Yeah, it's like an E-Trade, or something like that, right?
And, I've been tweeting that I'm still bullish on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But don't consider silver and the silver ETF the same thing.
That's exactly right.
And Bitcoin is not the same as Sam Bankman-Fried. Fried.
Yeah, so that's the first part. And I think it's important to understand. And as I said, I have firsthand knowledge of this. So one of my really good friends, someone I used to work with, actually launched a token with Sam Bankman-Fried in Alameda last year. And basically within 2 months, hired a couple developers. Alameda gave him $12 million for this token that he made out of thin air at about a 3 cents valuation. And they flipped him to their VC friends at 9 cents, 12 cents. And then VC dumped him on retail at 26 cents. So venture capitalists love this because they, typically venture capitalists would put money in and they wouldn't get money back out for 7 to 10 years. Like if they invested into Uber, for example, real money, a real company, 7 to 10 years with no liquidity. In this crypto market, they could put money in and instantly within 90 days or 180 days get a 10x or 20x return on their money. So it's brought hundreds of millions of dollars from venture capitalists, which then brings hundreds of millions of dollars into advertising and media. And so this whole crypto thing has been built up on fake pump and dump, right? They're creating Fugazi, they're creating vaporware, and the VC loves it because they can 10x or 20x their money instantly. And then they use the media to build it up. And so everybody thinks they're like life-changing technology, but the reality is 99% of it is all nothing.
So I'll go back to my question again. Why are they so strange looking? I mean, I hate to say, I can't get past it. I mean,
well, look at the Ponzi's, or I'm sorry, the Patsies throughout history, like the Lee Harvey Oswalds. Aren't they always a little bit strange looking?
Yeah, they're strange looking, but they're now our leaders, political leaders. I mean, Jesus. Anyway, so when I say that it's not Bitcoin, it's FTX was the problem.
Right.
What else did you find out? Because I'm puzzled. I mean, how can anybody be that stupid?
Yeah.
I just cannot believe that.
Well, greed, right? Unfortunately, people, they get blinded by greed, and they want that, and they see all this money being made in this gambling space or this lottery space, and so they all want to jump in. But just because Sam Bankman-Fried did obvious fraud, obvious scam, obvious lies, now it's going into bankruptcy court. They have the same bankruptcy attorney as did the Enron case, which of course Enron was like the largest scandal ever. He said today that he believes this is the worst he's ever seen in his entire career.
Who, the Enron guy?
Yeah, the Enron attorney who's working on the FTX bankruptcy said this is the worst, most fraudulent case he's ever seen. So, for example, FTX was bringing in all this money through Alameda and through FTX Exchange. I'm talking, hundreds of billions of dollars. They had no ledger or accounting of where the money came from. Everything was commingled in one account. Customer funds, investor funds, remittances, payment, everything was commingled in one single account, and they had no accounting or ledger to even decide who was owed what. They had no list of employees. There was no human resources, no list of employees. So they don't even know if these employees are real or not, or if they're fraudulent. All expenses were done over like instant messenger Slack, and they would approve invoices with just an emoji, like happy face. Yes, we approve it. So, like no kidding. I mean, it was this bad. And then they use Signal, which is a very private app for communications. And they use Signal to hide most of their communication so that no regulators would even see what they were doing. I mean, this was a fraudulent organization from the very beginning. And so, you can't blame Bitcoin or crypto for this. This is an operator who did something criminal.
That's like blaming the silver ETF.
Right.
And I have a lot of silver, a lot of gold, but I don't have anything in ETFs.
And you don't blame silver for that, no. Right? It's the ETF operator. And then what they did, and this is where it starts to look pretty bad for the Democratic Party or the powers that be, however you want to frame that up. But it looks like what they were doing, FTX, and why Jim Cramer called him the JP Morgan, is they went after and took down the largest cryptocurrency company. So they were responsible for the Terra Luna takedown, which was $60 billion that got eviscerated in May of this year.
Did that?
FTX did that. Then they went and took down Celsius. So Celsius was a really large, we call it a CFI, or centralized finance exchange. They took them down. And this took out, we're talking about tens of thousands or millions of people who lost their life savings. They went and took them down. All right. Then they took down BlockFi. And what they were doing is they went to BlockFi. So BlockFi is a place where people would send their cryptocurrency in exchange for loans or in exchange for yield back. And they took them down. And then they said, hey, here's what we're going to do, BlockFi. We're going to bail you out, but we're not actually going to give you any money. What we're going to do is we're going to guarantee your customer deposits, but you have to give us all your money. You have to park your money with us. So they were pretending to bail people out, but stealing it. And that's why Cramer called them the JP Morgan, because they're supposedly bailing these companies out.
So Mark, once again, they're pretty smart dudes, but they're criminals.
Criminals.
They're very smart. I can't handle it. My brain doesn't think that way. I just couldn't do that. But anyway, so when we come back, I want to go into how come they donated so much to the criminal Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Like I said, how did this guy Fetterman, another family from Central Casting in Hollywood, and then how come Arizona, we can't even count our votes here. How much of that was paid for by, Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX and all that? How deep did this criminal operation go into U.S. politics? We'll be right back.
Robert's been warning us for years. His golden rule: invest in real assets. That's how he didn't just survive the last period of catastrophic inflation, he thrived, turning one property into an empire of over 7,000. Inflation be damned. But with the Fed raising interest rates again last week, this time around could be even worse. We could be on the verge of another historic crash. Now, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, the largest asset manager in the world, says there's one real asset that investors need to know about because of its resilience during times like these. Fink even calls it the new gold. He's talking about fine art. The last time inflation was this high, fine art appreciated an average of 17.5% per year. That's more than stocks and real estate in that same period. Now, you can invest in fine art for a fraction of what billionaires like Fink pay. All thanks to Masterworks. It's the new tech platform that lets you invest in shares of paintings by legends like Picasso and Banksy. Masterworks has produced incredible results. Like in early October, when Masterworks sold a painting for 21.5% net return. In fact, 6 of Masterworks' 7 exits have returned over 20% net to their investors, and 4 of those exits were this year alone. With inflation still soaring and major economic markers flashing red, the next 6 months could be some of the most important of your investing life. Paintings have sold out in minutes on Masterworks, but you can get priority access. Going to masterworks.art/richdad. That's masterworks.art/richdad. See important disclosures at masterworks.com/CD.
Hey everyone, it's Sarah at the Rich Dad Radio Show. Let me tell you, good sleep is the ultimate game changer, and the 8 Sleep Pod is the ultimate sleep machine. I live in Arizona. It's over 100 degrees today, and it's only expected to get hotter throughout the week. And the Pod is the only sleep technology that dynamically cools and heats each side of the bed to maintain the optimal sleeping temperature for what your body needs. With the Pod, you can start sleeping as cool as 55 degrees Fahrenheit or as hot as 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And clinical data shows that 8 Sleep users experience up to 19% increase in recovery, up to 32% improvement in sleep quality, and up to 34% more deep sleep. And 8 Sleep recently just launched the next generation of the Pod. The new Pod 3 enables more accurate sleep and health tracking with double the amount of sensors, delivering you the best sleep experience on Earth. And all you need to do is go to 8sleep.com/richdad to start sleeping cool this summer and save up to $150 on the Pod. 8 Sleep currently ships within the USA, Canada, the UK, select countries in the EU, and Australia.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news today about FTX, Bitcoin, and all that. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am still in favor of Bitcoin. I'm not against it, as many people in my age group are, because I think Bitcoin's solid. I'm actually more into blockchain than I do own Ether or whatever, Ethereum, whatever that stuff. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I do invest in it. And you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes, Android, and YouTube. And all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them for one reason, is that we're a purely educational show. We don't sell anything. But we archive it so you can listen to this program again. And you listen to it a second time. It's like putting. The more you putt, the smarter you get, you know. And so listen to this again, but most importantly, have your friends and family members listen to it and then discuss it. We're not asking anybody to agree or disagree, but I think this is one of the biggest scams in history. And our guest today is Mark Moss. He's a nationally syndicated radio host. I can't believe how fast he came up with all this information. He's a syndicated radio host on iHeart Network, content creator on YouTube, and podcaster. And his newest book is Uncommunist Manifesto. FTX was one of the biggest contributors to the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
How far is this corruption going, Mark?
Well, it goes pretty far. So Sam Bankman-Fried, he has a hyphenated last name, Bankman and Fried. And that's because one of his parents is Bankman and one of his parents are Fried.
Right.
And the reason why he decided to keep both of them in hyphenated is because both of his parents are pretty well known, pretty famous in the political circles.
Right.
So they're both professors, law professors. And his father and his mother, both kind of specifically around tax law. His father has been lobbying and writing papers to end cash, to get rid of cash, and to find ways to enforce tax policy and things like that. They're also both what they call bundlers, which means they collect lots of money and then donate that money to super PACs, right, to Democratic super PACs. So they're massively involved in the Democratic Party in politics, both in writing policy, in influencing policy, as well as raising money for the Democratic Party. So that kind of starts there. We know that his aunt works for the World Economic Forum, and John Hopkins, which of course ran the Pandemic 201. That was the event previous to the pandemic happening. So that's his aunt. His brother also.
The World Economic Forum is Klaus Schwab, right?
Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, yeah. Which of course SPF's company FTX is a partner with the World Economic Forum. Right now, we're just talking about his family. So his parents, his aunt, his brother also is part of a think tank and a nonprofit pushing, pandemic and COVID policies. And so Sam Bankman-Fried this week came out and said, the worst part about FTX going bankrupt is how are we going to save the world from the next pandemic? Like that's how blind he is now, right? So that's kind of it from a high level. And so a lot of people would say, well, how did he get here, right? I mean, who put the money up for this guy to kind of build this up?
His girlfriend, her father is some professor at MIT or something like that, or
yeah. So her father,
he's way up there also.
Yeah, her father, Gary Ellison, is from MIT, which he worked under Gary Gensler, who's the head of the SEC.
Jesus.
So, of course, Sam Bankman-Fried and his girlfriend Caroline, that runs Alameda, were very, very cozy with the SEC, Gary Gensler, as well as the CFTC. So he has hired many, many regulators from the CFTC, which is the governing body of the Commodities Futures Trading Exchange. So he's hired lots of them. He's donated lots of money to Maxine Waters. Maxine Waters is... Yeah.
Another strange looking person.
Supposed to be in charge of the oversight of this. So she's been seen in multiple pictures. He's donated lots of money. And then this is a little bit drawing at straws. And so I don't have facts to back this up, but where there's smoke, there's fire. And FTX was founded right when Biden announced he was going to run for office. FTX became the second largest donor to the Biden administration. They donated $40 million of stolen funds to the Democratic Party for the midterms. And then, of course, when this whole Russia-Ukraine situation came up, and regardless of what the facts are behind that war, we know that wars are always a way to funnel money from taxpayers into their pockets. Very quickly, there was all this groundswell movement of let's get the people involved. And so then people wanted to donate money to the Ukrainians, and they were donating money through cryptocurrency. And of course, FTX opened up, and we'll take all that cryptocurrency and we'll donate it to Ukraine on your behalf. So now there's deep ties with Ukraine. How much of that money was being funneled, or should we say washed through that situation? So massive ties to the Biden and the Democratic Party, massive ties to the regulators, Gary Gensler and the CFTC, massive ties to Ukraine and the World Economic Forum. I mean, it is as dirty as this can get.
Jeez. I also heard that Ukraine also invested in FTX. The money came back. And so a lot of that money we sent for weapons came back to finance FTX.
Right. It looks like it was like this big circular, they are washing it through that system. He's like, he's like, whatever, right? Like, okay, I lost it. Like I could have made it back. Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, came out 2 days ago, which I tweeted about. And he said, I would invest into Sam Bankman-Fried's next company. Like, wait, the guy who led the biggest fraud, who literally, he stole over $10 billion. $10 billion. I mean, Robert, think about this. $10 billion. That's tens of thousands of families who lost everything. People's lives are ruined here. To him, it's just a couple numbers on a keyboard. Oh, $10 billion, whatever. No. We're talking about tens or hundreds of thousands of families whose lives are ruined. Now, will the Democratic Party give any of that stolen money back? Most likely not.
So Kevin O'Leary has been endorsing SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, for a while.
Yep.
Why would he do it? I mean, why would he risk everything? Why would Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, keep sticking his neck out?
Yeah. What's interesting is somebody like Kevin O'Leary, and I don't know him personally. I did sit on the news desk with him at the Bitcoin conference last year, so I did get to hang out with him one-on-one, but I don't know him. I would just think after watching Shark Tank that he would do some due diligence before he would invest into these companies. And so when you look at what the bankruptcy guy from Enron is saying, how bad their books are, how bad things are run, there was no records, there was no nothing. How could Kevin O'Leary put money into a company like that? And now it makes me have to rethink, him and everybody else who was invested into these deals. They also got Tom Brady, poor Tom Brady and his wife Giselle. They invested a massive stake. We don't know exactly the dollar amount. They invested a massive stake in FTX. That's all gone as well. I mean, this is a big, big problem. But the bigger problem is, like I said, the ties to the WEF, the ties to the Democratic Party, stealing $10 billion worth of families' life savings, and then the midterms just taking it all away.
How much, let's get down to, Tom Brady, he can make that money back. O'Leary can make that money back. What's going to happen to the millions of people who, bet the ranch on a fraud? What's going to happen to them? How long is it going to take for them to get any money back?
So, in the elections, there's polls, but then there's also like betting markets, and the betting markets are typically way more accurate than the polls are, right? And so there's a betting market going on, and it's, will SBF be federally indicted by the end of the year? And 75% of the votes say no.
Right.
No,
that's why he's offshore.
He won't be indicted. So, he's indicted. He's offshore. So it's a Bahamas corporation, but there's also FTX US. They also have the only U.S. regulated derivatives exchange, and he's an American citizen. So, come on, we got Julian Assange. Come on. Okay, so he put a corporation in the Bahamas. Does that really insulate him from the arm of the United States? He's an American citizen. He defrauded U.S. people. But, of course, he donated so much money to the right people. So that looks like why he'll probably be protected. And the betting markets are saying right now 75% chance he will not be indicted by the end of the year. He's still walking around free. He's not even in cuffs. That right there, he should have been arrested immediately, right? Maybe he's out on bail, but no, he's just still walking around free. It's just insane.
Wow. I think this is, what you're basically saying, this is the end of America, when we're that corrupt. At the highest of levels, we're that corrupt.
We're that corrupt. Now, I do want to say, I'd like to kind of think where I think this goes. And I do want to say that there's a big distinction between Bitcoin and crypto. And the big distinction that I would put there is that commodities, so we think commodities of gold, oil, wheat, commodities don't have a central issuer. I can go buy land and get oil, buy land and get gold, buy land and grow wheat, and wheat can be grown or oil can be done all around the world. Bitcoin is the only digital commodity or only digital asset that has no issuer. So there's no company, there's no steering committee. There was no pre-mine where they released tokens to the environment, to the public. So Bitcoin is the only commodity or digital asset that has no issuer. All the other cryptocurrency, Ethereum being the second largest, had a 70% pre-mine. So there's a group of people, Vitalik Buterin, that created Ethereum, created the tokens, kept most of them for themselves. And there's a steering committee. So they just changed the consensus protocol. So by the SEC's definition, those are security. Those are companies. They're companies. Bitcoin is a digital commodity, and it's the only one out of the 20,000 that are there. So big distinction.
So are you invested in Bitcoin, and would you, and all that?
Of course. I think Bitcoin, I think this is bullish for Bitcoin. I think this is bad for cryptocurrency overall. And the reason why is the regulations will prevent the new regulations, I think, will come from this, will prevent these venture capitalists from doing this pump and dump onto retail. And then all of that money that's been siphoned away from Bitcoin to go into this pump and dump schemes, I think will then go back to Bitcoin. I think it's going to be extremely bullish for Bitcoin.
Okay. Once again, the Rich Dad Show, we don't make recommendations. We just talk about what we do. And for full disclosure, is I still have Bitcoin. I've never sold, but I bought it at 6,000, so I'm still in the money. And I also don't need the money. There's a big part of it. You can take it all from me. It doesn't hurt me at all because I have gold, silver, real estate. I have other assets. But so do you think Tom Brady bet the farm on this one? That's what I'm hearing.
A lot of headlines were saying that Tom Brady and Giselle, invested their $650 million stake. But in my research, as best as I can tell, that's like their total net worth, $650 million. I would highly doubt they bet the farm on that. Reports have said it's probably somewhere in the mid to maybe even high 8 figures. So maybe that's, 20, 30, 40 million out of the 650 million. It's not a lot. As far as Tom making it back, I mean, he's at the end of his career. I mean, I don't know how much more he's going to make. So he's probably not going to make that back, but losing 10, 20, even 50 million out of 650 million isn't going to put you in the poorhouse. But it's still a shame. And more importantly, the problem, and actually there's a class action lawsuit that just got filed against all these celebrity endorsers, which I think is wrong. And again, that goes to show how bad America is. People don't want to take responsibility for themselves. Because Tom Brady said it was a good company, I invested into it. And that's ridiculous. But it's definitely going to reshape the way that we look at this and have politics and policies around it.
So final word of this. I mean, this Sam Bankman-Fried, he's one of the strange looking person.
Yeah.
I mean, he dressed in cargo pants and socks. And I mean, he does his best to look strange. I mean, there's a thing called barbers and hairstylists who could cut his hair. But that's what I mean. They're not ugly. They're strange looking.
Right.
So what did he have? What made people think he was so brilliant? Because if I looked at him, I'd say, there's no way I even come close to you, much less your girlfriend. But man, what did he have? What was the charisma or the thing that sucked people in?
I think it's like most fraudsters and scamsters, and all the way back to the early days of the United States and the snake oil salesman, right? Where they talk in things that are so complex that people think they're smart and they don't want to seem stupid, so they don't even ask questions. And so they dazzle them with all these fancy words and buzzwords and things like that. And the average person just goes, oh, I guess he knows what he's talking about, and he makes me feel stupid, so I won't even dig in. And I'm guessing that's what it was. However, like he was at the Bitcoin conference this last year, Caitlin Long, who's a regulator out of Wyoming, I believe kind of ran circles around him. But for most people, I think they were just blinded by the amount of money, sheer greed, and they just looked the other way, just in the case with Bernie Madoff and everybody else. Also one thing about Bernie Madoff is Bernie Madoff sat on the board of what is now FINRA. Right. His, I think, brother was like one of the head guys at the SEC. And so usually these fraudsters actually take roles within the regulating body. Right. And so Sam Bankman-Fried also did that. So he was with the SEC and CFTC. He was on stage with Bill Clinton and Tony Blair. He was with Maxine Waters. And so I think then people kind of dismiss a lot of the questions because they see that charade.
But every person you mentioned, if I was standing next to him, I wouldn't stand next to him. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just really can't believe it. I just cannot believe it. So my friend Mark, thank you very much. Great job of researching this whole thing and tracking it. And let's see what shoe falls next, because I don't think all the doors have been opened yet, and there's more to come. So stay in touch.
There's more to come.
Yeah. All right, so we'll be right back. Thank you, Mark Moss. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money today. We're talking about FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, the cast of strange characters like Maxine Waters and Bill Clinton, and how did people get sucked in? Kevin O'Leary, Jim Cramer. They all got sucked in. And not that I've not been sucked in, but I don't get sucked in that badly. And they put their reputations on the line with this guy who finances World Economic Forum, the Democratic Party, and other strange characters from Hollywood. So before we, once again, you can listen to our programs at any time, anywhere on iTunes, Android, and YouTube. All our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them So you can listen to this again, listen to it again. You'll pick up a little bit more and discuss it with your estranged friends. So before going to break, Sarah has a couple of questions from Mark.
Yeah, the first question is, and I think you started to touch on it, is the regulation of cryptocurrencies going forward. This will certainly cause a regulation of that whole system. Correct.
Yeah. I think it will. I think that, so many people have lost money. The noise is so high. I think they're going to have to do it. And I think it might have even been, if we want to get in the conspiracy side, potentially even a kind of a way to get more regulations imposed. And what that means is that it can certainly go offshore, right? And so we can certainly see it go into Korea and, other places of the world. But it was mostly the U.S. venture capitalists and media conglomerate that really pushed it to these, dizzying levels. And so if the regulations come down like I think they will, then you would expect to see these U.S. VCs kind of pull back out. And so while it might live offshore, it certainly won't get as big and hypey as it was in the past.
Yeah. My second point, and this, is to Robert too. So we talked about the celebrity endorsements, right? And putting your money just because, Tom Brady says he puts his money there. But I want to say, so Steph Curry, we know he's a Golden State Warriors basketball player. He's super awesome. He was featured in their ad, and his line says, "I'm not an expert and I don't need to be. With FTX, I have everything I need to buy, sell, and trade crypto safely."
Yeah. Again, I believe in personal responsibility. And so I don't like the fact that people want to say those people should be responsible for other people making bad decisions. But it certainly doesn't look good. That's for sure.
I'm thinking, Rich Dad is an education company, and we preach about real teachers, and verifying your credible sources and doing your research. And I can't help but think, like we've been talking about, the mom and pops who invested their life savings because they were hammered with advertising that's saying this is a safe place to put your money. And I agree, personal responsibility is a big deal. And I think that's my message.
Yeah.
Is you can't rely on celebrity endorsements or, and that's why we are very careful with Robert, who he endorses. And seriously, we have deals coming in, by the hundreds every year. Can Robert endorse this silver, product or whatever?
Yeah.
And we have to be so careful. Because our message too is get educated before you give one penny over to anyone.
And that is the perfect message. And I'll just want to put an exclamation point onto that. Never put your money into something you don't understand. If you don't understand it, keep your money, because it's always risky giving your money to somebody else, always. And so always understand what those risks are.
And also what I say, because I got caught in a Ponzi once, it cost me like $1,500. But it was the best $1,500 I ever spent, and it was a Ponzi scheme. FTX is a Ponzi scheme where they depended upon the funds from the next stupid investor to finance it. So I'm not against making mistakes, but make small mistakes and learn from them.
Yep.
Because that one Ponzi scheme, I knew I shouldn't have done it, but it sounded so good. I said, so I put 1,000 and they asked for another 500, and I went, okay. And then it disappeared. I went, okay, thank you. That was cheap.
Yeah.
But, it's priceless. So we also teach here at Rich Dad, that mistakes are how we learn. But this one is huge. And again, they're the strangest looking characters. Everybody they finance is strange looking. I don't mean they're ugly. They just did everything in the world to look strange. We could all look strange if we wanted to. So anyway, it's a strange world. We're still counting votes here in Arizona, and I can't believe what's going on in the world. So, Mark, thank you very much. Thanks for being a credible source, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Mark. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you.
đường làng quanh co sông thu êm đềm hà diều đã bóng đắm say giữa đồng kỷ niệm yêu thương trong mỗi ngày tiếng cu gọi hãy nhớ biết bao tôi xa quê bao năm tháng qua nhưng trong trái tim không bao giờ xa lời mẹ ru con hiu hiu chưa hè mùa lụt nước lũ bắt cá giữa đường biển trời